Hello, everyone. Hope you're able to hear me okay. My name is Ather Imran. I'm CEO of Cyber Private Limited, which is a Laxon Group company. I am absolutely thrilled to be here. Uh, PWIC and I have a long relationship. I've been working with Huma and team for a while as they were building up this excellent platform. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be sharing my thoughts and that hopefully help everyone around here. They've put up a great show. Congrats to the entire PWIC team. The idea of my talk that I discussed is that over a period of 20 years, there are certain things that I learned that I believe are more helpful if, as early as possible in your career, you find out. So the idea is not to go into a details of all of them. The idea is really to plant certain seeds in your mind. You may not understand all of them at once because you may be very early in your career. It requires experience sometimes to go through certain things to understand. But if that seed is planted in you, you will be able to relate to it at a later time, and you will be able to find out. So these are 8 rules. Let's go with that, and I'll hopefully we'll have enough time at the end for question and answers. So the idea of so before the rules start, the kernel means the core idea. The core idea is that Peter Drucker once said that as executives, as professionals, whenever a problem comes to you, you have to abstract it out. It means that you have to go to the highest level to think that what is the core issue behind this. So you don't solve the issue that came to you, you solve the reason why that issue originated. There's a 5 whys principle that if there is a problem at an assembly floor, you sort the problem, but you figure out how it happened. So this is the idea of policies that we make, or frameworks that we make, that irrespective of the situation, we know what needs to be done. The reason is that if you don't make these general principles that work in all situations, you will always be guided by your emotions at that particular situation. So you may be feeling good and you may be more lenient, or you may be distraught by a certain other emotion and you'll take a certain different approach towards a problem. So you'll be inconsistent. So these are policy level or principle level issues that irrespective of the situation or how you're feeling, you adapt to them. That's the core idea. So the rule 0 is that, this is before the first 8 rules that, even this is another Drucker quote, that when you put somebody in a position and that person fails in that position, it is not his or her fault. It is more a fault of the person who put them in the place. So, just a thought process around that is this: if my talk fails, you have to blame the PWIC because they are the ones who placed me here. Rule number 1, and I'm going to go through them quickly and you get a feel of it. And these are things that have worked for me, so there is no theoretical principle behind this. Your network is your net worth. You will figure out that as you grow, how many people you know, how much you know them, how deep is your relationship, and how diverse is that network is going to be the key to your success. Individual brilliance takes you only to a certain place, but how much of a network that you build around yourself will determine your ultimate success, or for that matter, the success of your team, the success of your organization. Here is a model that I always use: connect, relate, transact. You connect with a certain person, you use that connection to build up a relationship, and then you drive some value or a transaction out of it. So you meet somebody at a networking event, you connect with them, then you have to follow it up and you build up a relationship with them. And the relationships are built when you give value. It's not when you take value only. And then once you have that relationship, then you can do certain transactions out of it. You give transactions and you give value, or you learn value from them. We do it the other way around most of the time. We start with transactions. and then we end at transactions. It's unsustainable. It's like building a house on a muddy road. You have to have value built on top of the foundation that is relationship. It's not very tangible because it's not very visible. But relationships are the only thing that will help you deliver value. And the point that I mentioned is the clusters. So your network is not how many people you know that are similar to you. If you keep reading the same books or books around the same subject, there is going to be a little bit of a value of how much you learn. How diverse your network is, that is different clusters. So as a software engineer, for example, you need to know people who are designers. You need to know people who are good home architects. You need to know people around every cluster. The diversity is important because as you go along, it is the people that are not similar to you, how much you know them is going to be the key value, and not how much the people around your own self that you meet. We work always in silos. That's a default human behavior. That doesn't work. Rule number 2 that I have found is humility takes you places that nothing else can. And especially in societies like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, where there is a very strong culture around respect for elders and respect for the general society, it is going to be the humility that is sometimes actually can be the key differentiation. I'll give you an example. You may be right on an issue, but if you become arrogant or you deal with that issue in a wrong way, your behavior becomes the core issue. You may be right on the starting point, but that doesn't make any sense at all because you were not humble about it. And you just went on a path where your behavior took the center stage, and that drives the value. Humility will take you places. And humility is many things, but the key thing that I like is empathy, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, listening, that you understand. Just hear a person out will solve most of the problems, even if you have no power to solve the actual problem. Just hear the person out completely. An actual engagement, working with them. Rule number 3. Again, there's a sequence. You do the things, we do the right things, but if you do it in wrong sequence, that absolutely takes the situation away. We generally create solutions, and then we try to go and look for problems. It should be the other way around. You create a problem, or you understand a problem, or you create an opportunity around a gap where you can either solve something which is not right, or you can improve something which is already there. And then you figure out what is the solution around it. So many of you may be going for startups, building your own thing. Always start with what is the problem that you're trying to solve. And then your solution fits into it, especially the techie people. I have a similar background. You would create something that you feel is absolutely awesome, and then you would assume it would work. You never realize sometimes that there's no problem around it. Rule number 4, think big. Big, hairy, audacious goals. And that is a very deep psychological concept as well. How much you stretch yourself, how much you think big, that is going to absolutely determine how you go about it. For example, if you set a goal which is very reachable, you would plan and think differently. For example, I'm in Islamabad. If I have to go a couple of hours away, I can just get into my car, no planning, and I'll get there. But if I have to drive 2,000 miles south to Karachi, I'll have to plan differently. So whenever you, as an organization, as an individual, set your goals at a stretch, big, hairy, audacious goals, you would approach the problem and your thinking in a way that is going to be completely different than an incremental path that you can take. Set your goals high. You may not reach all of them, but it's better to think high and miss it a little bit as compared to thinking low and hitting it. The fall of the superstar. That's one of the most famous rules. I am a gold medalist from my own university. I had a distinction, highest distinction in my master's. And I'm not saying it, I'm saying it only to prove a point, is that people who do very well academically are at the most risk of failing in professional life. The reason is not that they're incapable, it's because as an individual contributor, which you are in your bachelor's or master's, you do very well, you get highest grade. If you get a grade A, it's mostly because you did well. It's not your team did well in general. You go to your professional life and you do well because you are an individual contributor at the start. So you do well and you grow and you get to a point of time where you believe that since I'm so good, because I'm competent and hardworking and I can work on my own, that it will take me places. But sooner a point comes where you have to get working with people. It's about a team play where your EQ is more important than your IQ. And that's where the superstars fall, because the most important thing I learned is that your greatest strength becomes your greatest weakness. Because you believe something has already always worked and you keep doing it the same way. That is why great batsmen doesn't mean that they're great coaches or they're great captains. Very, very important to it. That's why it's important to keep learning and keep understanding that at the end, your social skills, your network will take you places. Doesn't mean your individual contribution doesn't work. Rule 6, and I'll go through the last 3. It's that we believe that, and it's related to the network, but it's slightly different. We learn and we thrive in communities. Community is a group of people around a concept. It may be a smoking community in your office, or it can be a community around tech. It can be a community of designers. It can be a community of alumni. So we don't understand the value of communities. It's similar to the clusters concept that I mentioned, but community has its own social dynamics. They relate to a concept, they provide value to each other, they may be a community leader. It is extremely important that we understand the value of communities and we become part of them. The best book to read is Tribes by Seth Godin, and you will understand this concept. Apple became famous because they've understood the concept of community and they build an Apple community around the Apple ecosystem. It's not just a tech play. All political movements, all social movements build communities. You have to become part of communities to get value, to give value, and to succeed. Rule 7, and as you can figure out it by most of the preceding rules, that you have to understand in life in order for you to succeed, whether at a personal or a professional level, it's going to be all about people. It doesn't mean that it's not about your competence or about your expertise or about your skill set. It is about people. Your competence is necessary, but not sufficient. It's a threshold for you to get a minimum, but then in order to really, really succeed, it's all about people. Exceptions are always there. The absolute superstar rocket scientist, but exceptions are exceptions, and most of us don't fall in it. I wrote a blog a long time ago, compilers are easy, people are difficult. The idea is that compilers is one of the most difficult computer science tools. It comes from my background. You have to understand it's very interdependent, but ultimately, if you spend time and energy, you will figure it out. No matter how difficult it is, you will figure it out. And then it will work if you figure it out. People don't work the same way. People behave differently in different situations. There is no compiler or any structure around behaviors. It's more dynamic, it's more flexible, it's more difficult to get a model around. And that's why the individual contributors also fail, because they're used to dealing with compilers. But when they start dealing with people, they treat them as compilers. They believe they're going to figure it out, or they can just instruct and get what they want. And the last rule, which I personally like, is the power of the increment. That means you have to be consistent. You have to do things day in, day out to really get value. There's a concept of 20-mile march by that author Jim Collins, is that in order to get somewhere, you have to walk 20 miles every day. You have to be consistent. You have to do certain things day in, day out. It's the boring people that win who do consistent work, not the people who just thrash it out once in a while. Whatever you need to do, whether it is learning, whether it is building up a relationship, or whether it is your work improvement, you need to do on an incremental basis. You do it daily, and the incremental value that comes out of it is going to be the key thing. A very simple principle. If you just do a 0.01 every day, it's much more than if you don't do that. The compound principle, by the way, compounding principle works on the same way. So I'm closing out. Did you know how many of the rules are around people? Just keep that in mind. That is especially true for all the brilliant individual contributors around there, the smart computer scientists. Thank you very much. I'll try to figure out the questions if I can, but I'll leave it to the PWIC team if we have enough time. You can always reach me through LinkedIn or through PWIC. I'll be happy to connect and give any value. But thanks a lot for listening to me. So how does it work? If I can just look at the questions.
Yeah, Ather, we have a couple of questions. I can read it for you. So the first question I have is, for an introvert, what practices do you think will help them network with people?
One of the best practices that you have to understand that networking is not an art. It is a set of principles. You have to learn and understand them. It's a very good question because we believe that it's a social kind of a setting where certain people born who are outgoing, they can do it well. If you come up with a certain set of principles and a certain rules on how to start an engagement, how to start a discussion, how to follow it up, I have seen some of the introverts or shy people as the best networkers. The first thing that you have to really get out of your mind is that it is not an art, or it is not even a social skill. It is a very technical, if you can break it down, it's a very technical way. So you figure it out how to start the discussion, how to talk to them, how to follow it up, you do some research before you start to them. And certainly all the difficult things that you have to achieve in life have to be when you get out of your comfort zone. So there'll have to be a certain level of effort that you will need to do. But it's very doable if you do it in a very specific, in a particular way. The good part is that once you do it for a little while, you get a hang of it and it becomes a habit. So it's not that difficult at all.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that question. The next question we have is, will this network concept rule 1 still apply in the gig economy?
I think it applies more. If I understand that, probably by the gig economy, it means that, the standard structures of jobs may not be the same as they were before. First of all, it is a concept around human nature. We are social creatures. This concept is used by politicians. This concept is used by athletes. This concept is used by journalists. It's nothing to do with fresh graduates, young professionals, or technology folks. It is something that is extremely, you have to understand, it's a very socially structured concept. And I think in any economy, in fact, if the gig economy, you are doing multiple gigs, I think it may even apply more. Because some of the key things you have to understand that you get out of the networking is not jobs or more avenues of revenue or income for you. The key thing that you get out of it is learning and understanding and being effective and getting something done, whether even it's at a personal level. I hope I've answered that.
Yeah, I think it's really good. I like the response a lot. So next question we have from Farah Ali. She's asking, how do you build your community if you don't find like-minded people around you? How do you seek them out?
So don't find like-minded people around you. I think that's the key thing. So you never, I remember in school, the teachers would never let us sit with our friends, right? Make sure you sit with somebody that you don't know or somebody different than you. So how to seek out? I think there are networking events. LinkedIn is a great resource. You just, in large organizations, you have lunch with people that are not from your own department. That's the core idea. I mean, if you will always find people like you, that's the easiest part. The key thing is to, kick them out sometime and go towards people that you don't like. The CEO of the Huffington Post once said that I typically hire people that I may not want to go out on a lunch with. So it is the diversity in your network that you need to bring that will make you more effective. As I said, you will never keep on learning if you keep reading the books from the same author on the same subject. You will have to ask people that are different and actively seek them out. There will always be people. I think that will never be an issue. It is how you access them and approach them. And as I said, that's not an art or a social skill. That's more a practical, stepwise process.
Great. We'll take one more question and then we'll end. So the next question is from Muhammad Rani. He's asking, how do you respectfully disagree with a senior?
Very good question. So one of the best books that I've read was from Malcolm Gladwell. I think it was The Outliers or something. But he mentioned that Korean Airways, they had a major a high frequency of crashes, airplane crashes. And when they dug it out, it got to an understanding that a lot of it was bad communication between the captain and the co-pilot. And the reason was that it's like ours, it's a society that respects seniors a lot, the elders a lot. And if you see them doing a wrong thing, they would still be polite about it. Right? So it works okay if you're having dinner, but if the captain of the plane is making a mistake and the co-pilot is not communicating that mistake in a blunt way. So they actually had a recording in which the plane crashed, and just a minute before that, the co-pilot was still being respectful, knowing that the captain is making a mistake. So what they did was that they set up very clear-cut SOPs or procedures on how to communicate. Captain, I'm doing a level 4 escalation to you. I'm doing a level 5 escalation to you. This is critical XYZ. How we can never work around our social systems, and our social systems are great. The idea is that you can always go on a topic rather than the person. So I always try as a manager to differentiate between the person and the behavior. So you focus on the behavior and not the person. If somebody is not dressed up well in the office, I'm just giving an example, you say the dress that you're having, the way you're dressed up today is not right for the environment. You don't say you don't know how to dress up. In the first case, you focused on the behavior. In the second case that I described, you attacked the person. So it's the same way with seniors. I mean, you can be very respectful and you can ask in as objective and unemotional way, or communicate your thing. But as at an organization level, if you have that expertise, there needs to be proper systems in which escalations can happen or disagreements can happen. If there is none, then obviously it leaves ground for manipulation or the social structures to take place.
Great. Thank you so much, Ather, for being here. I think this session was really, really useful. I really like the rules, especially the ones around the people. As a manager, I do think that it's also important to understand the people that you're working with and the team and everybody around, and really like the advice that you gave. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all.